Hi, you're on a rock, floating in a vacuum. It's very cold, but you're not cold. You're warm. Well, mostly warm. You're a psycho at chemistry that somehow, against all statistical probability, learned how to have anxiety about emails. Look at your hand. Seriously, put the phone down or hold it up. I don't care. Look at your hand. Wiggle your fingers. Congratulations. You're piloting a meat mech that took 3.8 billion years of R&D to develop. You look at that hand and you see skin and bone. But a physicist looks at that hand and sees a temporary rebellion against entropy. The universe wants to be chaotic. It wants to be cold, uniform dust. But you're a highly ordered, energy-consuming defiance of the laws of physics. You are the CEO of a corporation made of 30 trillion cells, and every single one of them is screaming. But how did we get here? How did we go from a sterile, rocky rock floating in the darker parts of the galaxy to TikTok, skyscrapers, tax returns, and the concept of brunch? To understand that, we have to go back, way back, hitting the rewind button. Stop. 4.5 billion years ago, the Hadean Aeon, named after Hades, the Greek underworld, which is subtle foreshadowing. Earth is a teenager. It has acne, except the acne is volcanoes the size of continents. And it has a temper, which is constant asteroid impacts. It's a hellscape. There's no oxygen. There's no life. There's just spicy rocks and death. And just to make things worse, right around this time, a planet the size of Mars, let's call her Theia, smacked directly into us. That collision melted the entire surface and flung enough debris into orbit to form the moon. So if you think your week is going badly, just remember, Earth started its life by getting T-boned at a galactic intersection. Fast forward a bit, the rock cools down, it rains. And I don't mean a drizzle, I mean a torrential downpour that lasts for a few million years. The floor is no longer lava. The floor is now wet. We have oceans, but not the nice blue ones you see on travel blogs. These are green, iron-rich, acidic oceans under a suffocating atmosphere of carbon dioxide and methane. And deep down in those oceans, near things called hydrothermal vents, chemistry is getting bored. Chemistry usually follows rules. Thermodynamics, physics, boring stuff. Atoms like to reach a state of equilibrium, which is a fancy way of saying they like to chill out and stop doing things. But here, in the dark, warm chemical soup, molecules started doing something illegal. They found a loophole in the second law of thermodynamics. They started clumping together, amino acids, nucleotides, the building blocks of you. We don't know exactly how it happened, because nature didn't leave a receipt. Was it the RNA world hypothesis, where RNA acted as both the hard drive and the software? Maybe. Was it metabolism first, powered by proton gradients in the rocks? Possibly. But one day, a molecule figured out how to copy itself. This is the moment the universe went from physics to biology. This is the dawn of Luca, the last universal common ancestor. Say hello to your grandma. And I don't mean your mom's mom. I mean the grandma of every bacteria, fungus, oak tree, blue whale, and accountant on the planet. If you look at the genetic code of bacteria and the genetic code of a human, the language is identical. We all use DNA. We all use the same 4 letters. We all use ribosomes to build proteins. Why? Because we all inherited the same source code from Luca. Luca was a single cell. She was microscopic. She had no eyes, no ears, and no brain. She just ate chemicals, pooped out byproducts, and split in half. She was the original influencer, and her follower count was about to hit the integer limit. Life was simple. Eat, divide, don't die, repeat. For a billion years, this was the game, the boring billion. But then a group of bacteria called cyanobacteria decided to ruin the housing market. These little blue-green guys figured out a cheat code. Until now, everyone was scavenging for scraps of chemical energy. The cyanobacteria looked at the sun, a giant fusion reactor exploding in the sky, and said, I'm gonna eat that. And somehow, they did. They developed photosynthesis. They took sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and smashed them together to make sugar. Infinite food glitch. Genius. But there was a catch. There's always a catch. To make the sugar, they had to break water molecules apart. When you break H2O, you keep the hydrogen for the sugar, but you have to dump the oxygen. We call it oxygen. You love it. You breathe it. But to the early life on Earth, it was mustard gas. It was napalm. Oxygen is highly reactive. It loves to steal electrons from other molecules. If you're a primitive bacteria with unprotected DNA, oxygen will literally rust you from the inside out. It fried their biochemistry. It burned them alive at a cellular level. As cyanobacteria pumped gigatons of oxygen into the atmosphere, they triggered the Great Oxidation Event. It was the first mass extinction. They literally polluted the world so hard, they killed almost everyone else. It's the ultimate bad neighbor move. Hey guys, I made some sugar. Hope you don't mind the poison fog. We can still see the crime scene today. If you look at banded iron formations in geology, Those red stripes of rust, that's the iron in the ancient oceans reacting with the new oxygen and falling to the seafloor. That is the rust of the apocalypse. But wait, it gets worse. The oxygen reacted with methane in the atmosphere. Methane is a super potent greenhouse gas that was keeping the Earth warm. The oxygen scrubbed it all out. The result? The Earth froze. The entire planet turned into a snowball. Not just the poles, the equator. For millions of years, Earth was a giant ice cube hurtling through space. This was the Huronian glaciation. Life barely hung on in tiny pockets of liquid water near volcanoes. It took eons for the planet to thaw out, mostly thanks to volcanoes pumping CO2 back into the atmosphere to warm things up. But when the ice melted, the survivors had a new trick. They learned to breathe the poison. They learned to use oxygen to burn sugar for massive amounts of energy. This is a crucial upgrade. Anaerobic respiration is inefficient. It's like getting 2 miles per gallon. Aerobic respiration is like getting 30 miles per gallon. This was the turbo boost life needed to get big, because before this, you're essentially running on a AA battery. With oxygen, you're hooked up to the power grid. So now, we have oxygen. Life is recovering. But everyone is still just a single cell. You're basically a balloon filled with jelly and loose DNA. To get bigger and smarter, life needed a corporate merger. Enter endosymbiosis. This is the most important business deal in history. Here's the scenario. You have a big predatory cell. It's swimming around, eating smaller stuff. One day, it swallows a tiny energetic bacterium, essentially a relative of those toxic breathing survivors. Usually, digestion happens. Done. But this time, digestion failed. A little bacteria survived inside the big one, and they made a deal. The little guy said, "Hey, don't dissolve me. I can take that oxygen you hate and turn it into supercharged ATP energy for you." The big cell said, "Deal. I'll give you protection and free rent." That little bacteria became the mitochondria. Even today, mitochondria have their own separate DNA, different from yours. They're technically aliens living inside your cells, paying rent in energy. This is the moment life got complex. Now we have eukaryotes, cells with a nucleus, organelles, and an attitude. These cells are like the Swiss Army knives of biology. They could grow bigger, build specialized structures, and eventually, they invented something that would ruin high school for everyone: sexual reproduction. Before this, you just cloned yourself. Mitosis. If you were a bacteria and you had a weakness, say you were vulnerable to a specific virus, your clone had the same weakness. And his clone, and her clone, one virus could wipe out the entire population. With sex, you could shuffle the genetic deck. You could take half your genes, mix them with someone else's, and make a brand new, unique mistake. This is the Red Queen's hypothesis. You have to keep running just to stay in the same place. Parasites and viruses evolve fast. By mixing genes every generation, you have a moving target. This sped up evolution like crazy. It introduced variation. It allowed nature to run A/B testing on a massive scale. Does this gene make you faster? No? Okay, you get eaten. Does this gene make you spiky? Yes. Okay, you survive. Evolution stopped being a slow crawl and became a sprint. But we're still just single cells. It was time to team up. It was time to invent the body, multicellularity. Some cells realized that living together was better than living alone. It started with colonies, like Volvox, just a ball of friends hanging out. But then it got serious. Imagine a group of cells where some decide to be the skin to protect the group, others decide to be the stomach to digest food, and others became sensors to find light. Specialized teamwork. This requires something called biological altruism. The skin cell has to agree to never reproduce, just to protect the sperm or egg cells inside. It sacrifices its immortality for the good of the organism. By working together, these clumps could get bigger, way bigger. They weren't just slime anymore. They were sponges, jellies, and worms. This was a massive risk though. If you're a single cell and you die, only you die. If you're part of a body and the heart stops, everyone dies. But the reward was worth it. You could eat things that were bigger than you. This set the stage for the Cambrian explosion, 541 million years ago. And no, nothing literally exploded. Nature just drank 10 energy drinks and went absolutely nuts. Before this, life was mostly worms and wet mats of microbial slime. Then, in just 20 million years, which is like 5 minutes in geological time, animals started showing up with the hard parts: shells, spikes, teeth, armor, actual organs, and most importantly, vision. The light switch theory suggests that the evolution of the eye changed everything. Before eyes, life was a game of bumper cars in the dark. You bumped into food, you ate it. Once something can see you, you can't just float around looking like a delicious jelly donut. You need defense. This kicked off an evolutionary arms race. Predators got faster, prey got harder. Natural selection went into overdrive, testing body plans that looked like they were designed by a toddler on hallucinogens. Enter Anomalocaris, the first super predator. It looked like a shrimp glued to a squid with a pineapple ring for a mouth. It grew up to a meter long, which doesn't sound big, but in a world of 2-inch worms, it was Godzilla. It terrorized the trilobites. We also see the first chordates, Our ancestors. Little wormy things like Picaya that had a stiff rod down their back called a notochord. That rod would eventually become your spine. You're basically a remixed worm. Deal with it. The ocean was now a battlefield. It was eat or be eaten. There was no morality, only survival. And the designs were wild. Hallucigenia walked on spikes. Opabinia had 5 eyes and a vacuum cleaner face. Nature was throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. Most of it fell off, but the blueprints for every modern animal group were drawn right there. But the ocean is dangerous. Everything wants to kill you. But up there, on the dry land, it is free real estate. Plants already made the move, turning the rock into soil. Insects followed. And because the oxygen levels were insanely high, bugs could grow to nightmare proportions. Dragonflies the size of hawks. Millipedes the size of cars. But our ancestors, the bony fish, were still stuck in the water until Tiktaalik. This is the fish that ruined your life. If this fish had just stayed in the water, you wouldn't have to pay taxes today. You'd just be swimming around. Happy. Tiktaalik was a lobe-finned fish living in shallow, swampy waters. It had fins that were suspiciously like arms. It had wrist bones. It did push-ups. Why? Maybe to run away from bigger fish. Maybe to catch bugs on the shore. Eventually, they crawled onto the mud. It was awkward. Gravity is heavy. In the water, buoyancy supports you. On land, you have to carry your own weight. But they stuck with it. Fins became paws, gills became lungs. The tetrapods had arrived. These early amphibians were terrible at walking, waddling around like drunk tourists. But they owned the land. They could eat all the bugs they wanted. But they had a fatal flaw. They were still tethered to the water to lay eggs. Amphibian eggs are jelly-like. If you lay them on dry land, they dry out and die. To truly conquer the continents, nature needed to invent the portable pond, the amniotic egg, a hard waterproof shell that keeps the baby wet inside a private swimming pool. With this tech, reptiles could march into the desert and flip off the ocean. They were free. Everything was going great. The land was full of giant lizards and mammal-like reptiles called synapsids. Our great-great-grandparents. We were actually doing pretty well. We were the dominant ones. And then, Siberia decided to delete the server. The Permian extinction, the Great Dying, 252 million years ago. A massive volcanic region called the Siberian Traps erupted. And not just a pop, it erupted continuously for 1 million years. It covered an area the size of the United States in lava. But the lava wasn't the main problem. The lava burned through massive deposits of coal, releasing trillions of tons of CO2 and methane. The planet cooked. Temperatures skyrocketed. The oceans turned acidic and lost their oxygen. Pink, toxic bacteria bloomed and released hydrogen sulfide gas. 96% of all marine species died. 70% of land species died. It was a hard reset. The dominant synapsids were decimated, leaving only a few tiny, terrified survivors burrowing in the ground to escape the heat. The way was cleared for the underdogs, the archosaurs. You know them better as the dinosaurs. With the competition dead, the dinosaurs took over, and they got big, really big. For 160 million years, the Earth was a reptile frat party. Why were they so successful? One theory is their lungs. They had a super efficient flow-through respiratory system, allowing them to thrive in the low oxygen air that followed the extinction. Sauropods stripped forests bare. T-Rex perfected the art of biting things in half with 12,000 pounds of force. And mammals, that's us, we were pathetic. We were tiny rat-like creatures called Morganucodon, scurrying around at night, eating insects, trying not to get squashed. We were NPCs in the dinosaur movie, but evolution was doing some weird stuff in the background. Some dinosaurs started growing feathers, not for flight, but for warmth or display. Eventually, some realized if they flapped hard enough, they didn't hit the ground as fast. Birds were born. Yes, a chicken is a T-Rex that went through the dryer. Look at a chicken's foot. That's a dinosaur's foot. The dinosaurs were unstoppable. They were the perfect biological machines. Nothing could ever take them down, except, a rock the size of Mount Everest moving at 40,000 miles per hour. 66 million years ago, the universe decided to check if the dinosaurs had saved their game. They hadn't. Bam! The Yucatan Peninsula gets vaporized. The impact released more energy than 1 billion nuclear bombs. A wall of fire circles the globe. Tsunamis the size of skyscrapers. But the impact didn't kill everyone. It was the dust. Debris blocked the sun for years. Photosynthesis stops. Plants die. Herbivores die. Carnivores die. Being big was suddenly a death sentence. You need too many calories. The reign of the giant lizards was over. But guess who survived? The tiny burrowing mammals who didn't need much food, could eat garbage, and already lived in the dark. The king is dead. Long live the rat. The mammals came out of their holes, looked around at the empty world, and said, "It's our time now, boys." We radiated into every niche. Some mammals went back to the ocean to become whales, literal traitors to the hard work of Tiktaalik. Bats learned to fly, and a group of tree-dwelling primates started getting weird. These primates developed grasping hands, forward-facing eyes, and big brains. But then, the climate in Africa changed. The dense rainforest dried up. The trees disappeared. We had to come down. We had to walk on the dangerous grassy savanna. To see over the tall grass, we stood up. Bipedalism. This was terrible for our backs, but great for our hands. Now our hands were free. We could hold sticks. We could throw rocks. We could point at things and say, that lion is going to eat Dave. This started a feedback loop. Using tools required brain power. Better tools meant more food. More food meant energy for a bigger brain. Then, we discovered the cheat code of all cheat codes. Fire. Cooking food pre-digested. It breaks down protein so your stomach doesn't have to work as hard. This freed up massive amounts of energy. Our guts got smaller. Our brains got huge. We invented language, so we could gossip about who is hogging the mammoth meat. Gossip is actually crucial. It builds social trust. We spread out of Africa, conquering every continent, surviving ice ages, and outbreeding or outfighting other humans like Neanderthals. We were the ultimate hunter-gatherers. But then, about 10,000 years ago, someone had the worst idea in history: agriculture. Instead of hunting and gathering, we decided to stay in one place and farm wheat. This led to surplus food. Surplus food meant you could feed people who didn't farm, like soldiers, kings, and scribes. This led to cities, bureaucracy, property taxes, and eventually, the DMV. We went from fighting saber-toothed tigers to fighting rush hour traffic. We tricked rocks into thinking, computers, and used them to look at pictures of cats and argue with strangers. We are the apex of 4 billion years of struggle, a hairless ape with anxiety and a smartphone, wondering why we're here. And the answer is pure, chaotic, beautiful luck. Evolution isn't a straight line toward better. It's a drunken walk through a minefield. It's about the survival of the fittest, yes, but also survival of the lucky, survival of the cooperative, and survival of the weird. If that asteroid had arrived 30 minutes later, it might have hit the deep ocean, sparing the dinosaurs, and you wouldn't be here. If a single bacteria hadn't learned to eat the sun, you wouldn't be here. But here's the twist. Evolution hasn't stopped, but it has changed. We are now the first species to take control. We can edit genes with CRISPR. We can cure diseases that would have wiped out our ancestors. We're building AI that might outthink us. We're planning to leave the planet. The story of evolution is 4 billion years long, but the next chapter? We're writing that one right now. So, the next time you feel small or insignificant, remember, you're the result of a 4 billion year winning streak. Don't break the chain. Thanks for watching. Go touch some grass. It's your cousin.